Folks, my guest this morning is Rupa Roos. Rupa is a county commissioner hopeful running for Madison County Commissioner, along with Michael Garrison, Clayton Rice, and Matthew Wechtel. Two of those will be elected to the county commission. Rupa, I hope it's not too early for you today.
No, I've had my coffee, so I'm good to go.
Good. Well, here's our alternative to that old man that compares the world to football. Unless you're a football fanatic, are you, Rupa?
I can't say I'm a fanatic, but I am. I do have a history. I grew up in D.C. for a fair number of years, and so I was always a Skins girl for loyalty reasons. But then later in life, I became so impressed with the Giants and what they do in the fourth quarter that I just couldn't help but start rooting for them for
compare a bunch of young brown-haired women who compare the world to football, right?
Let's go with that. I like it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you got your coffee. Before we get into politics, however, would you mind giving us a 2 or 3 minute biography of yourself? Maybe your birthplace, your education, some of your work history, and maybe a good movie you've seen lately.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Everybody's watching movies these days, either streaming or like my wife and I getting the DVDs. Go ahead, Rupa.
Yeah. Well, my name's Rupa Roos, and I was born in Washington, D.C., but I was raised by a single mama hippie, and so ended up getting carted around the United States a fair amount, spent some time in California and also Florida before ending back up in D.C. for my high school years, which were the most stable living situation that my mother and I had growing up. I grew up in poverty. I did not attend the same school until high school for more than a year at a time, and that influenced me in the decisions I made leaving high school and the choices I made thereafter. So, I ended up being pretty smart and using my wits, and I was successful in getting into real estate at a young age, and have been a landlord since I was 24 years old. I prioritize low-income renters because of my own childhood and the importance of having housing availability for absolutely every economic strata in our country.
Good.
But my mom was a real special creature. She had me later in life, and she was a veteran of the Navy. She served in the Korean War. And my name is Rupa because although I was raised Catholic, she was studying Buddhism when I was born. So I came into this world as Rupa. And I just say, throughout my life, I've lived in the Asheville area since 1998. I moved to Yancey County first, then to Asheville, and then out here to Madison County about 9 years ago. My mom and I were able to get our homestead together, and we have 50 acres that we've committed to the state of North Carolina, the majority of which will stay forest. So that's a little bit about me. I will say that, being one who wasn't drawn to academics, partially because of the tumultuous nature of my childhood and my exposure to academics, in early years, I not only understand the profound importance it is to have stability in children's lives so that they can have a commitment to their educational pursuits, but also their community. For me, my story meant that I circled back around again, so that at 38, I finished my associate's degree. At 40, I finished my bachelor's, and at 44, I graduated from law school, and should be a licensed attorney here soon enough. COVID kind of interfered with that this year. So my goal is to be able to serve our local community with the legal skills that I've worked hard with, as well to earn, and also to bring the awareness that I've had as now more mature adult to the various policies that are governing our local government and having such an impact on people's lives.
Yeah.
In terms of the more lightweight things, I'll say that I love to swim. I love to bang a tune out on my mandolin, although I'm really terrible at it. And a good movie, I just rewatched The Princess Bride because I'm such a romantic at heart.
With Andre the Giant, isn't he in that?
Yes, and Buttercup and
Oh, it's a
Inigo
cute. It's a
Montoya.
great movie. Did George Harrison had a hand in that too, I believe.
Did he
But
now?
anyways, it's off the subject. Well, here's the tough question. I guess I'm asking these same questions to all four of the county commissioner candidates. So I'm not putting you on the spot here. What is it that makes you want to run for county commissioner?
I'm really concerned about our future.
Uh-huh.
As I mentioned, I am, I made a commitment to the state that the parcel of land that my family has been able to become stewards of will remain forest and not be developed. I'm concerned that what Madison County will turn into if we don't have the right stewards in our government, specifically on the highest authority-making body for our county, which is the county commissioners, that we're going to end up merely becoming a bedroom community to the Asheville-Buncombe experience. And obviously, there's a lot of folks in Madison County who go to Asheville to work. The question is whether we're going to have such a population shift who is only in Madison County because they need a cheaper place to lay their heads at night. I think a lot of folks who are here now are here because they love the environment and they love the culture and the community that's available here when you want to tap into it, because obviously you got to drive to it. But I have decided that, it is part of my duties as someone who's worked so hard to understand the laws of our country as well as our state, to be able to give back to our community. And I think this is one of the best ways I could do that.
Good for you. Good for you. Well, being a resident of Madison County for 9 years, the past 9 years, what do you feel are the pluses of living in this beautiful land? You kind of mentioned some of them, right, just in the past question, but...
Well, I'll tell you what first made me hunker down in these parts, and Madison County especially. The heritage and the priorities for caring for our community that are historically practiced here in our county, really the culture, is so special that I think it even surpasses the environmental wonders that we get to live amongst. Although, it certainly is nice to be able to walk outside your door and take a breath of fresh air and drink and drink fresh mountain water. The same mountain water that ultimately ends up down and provides for those wonderful hot springs in other parts of the country like Florida and South Georgia and the like. So I'd say the environment is definitely a reason to be here, but I think it's the heritage and the community values, the mountain values, that are the reason to stay.
Good. Well, you've sort of answered the next question too, sort of. What do you see as the one biggest problem facing Madison County? Hello? Hello? Rupa, it looks like we have reached a call ended. Hold on, folks. Live radio. What do you expect, right? Let's see. You're going to hear it unfiltered and uncluttered. There
live
we
radio,
go.
right?
Hey, there. Live radio. It's all good. You're back, Rupa.
I am, and hopefully the cell service will continue to hold out for this.
Yeah. Where do you live? How far out are you?
I'm only over off Bend of Ivy, so I'm not too far out.
Yeah, it's
I'm pretty blessed.
kind of down in some hollers over there too, though.
That's right. I am in a deep holler over here.
Well, I'll repeat the question. What do you see? I thought you hung up when I asked you the one big problem. What do you see as the one biggest problem facing Madison County?
Yeah, the Asheville-Buncombe bedroom community concern is big because ultimately when you have such a large influx of people who come to an area very rapidly, it can not only overwhelm the folks who've been there doing their thing for generations, and that can create some major conflicts, but also you just sort of, you diffuse what made that community so special, and those voices have a tendency to get suppressed. And I want to make sure that doesn't happen in our future.
Well, I just read a good book on southern Mexico about a culture disappearing from basically the face of the earth. When basically native Mayans were kind of just run off. But okay, name a few other of the issues. You've already mentioned a few. Maybe we should go on. Hey, let's go on. Folks, I'm talking with Rupa Roos, who is running for a county commissioner seat in Madison County. October 15th is the beginning of early voting, or one-stop voting, where you can register and vote at the same time, at the Beach Glen Community Center, the Early College Gym, and the Hot Springs Community Center. Put it on your calendar, folks, and vote. Rupa, Norris Gentry and Craig Goforth are the two commissioners who voted against the asphalt plant being built, with Matthew Wechtel, Wayne Brigman, and Mark Snelson all voted not to take the advice of the Board of Adjustments. How would you have voted were you on the Board of Commissioners that day?
Sure. Well, I'd love to give a blunt answer, but before I do give my blunt answer, which I definitely will give, I would like to be a little bit presumptuous and say that I don't think we would have been in the position that we were in asphalt kerfuffle if I had been on the board for a year or so prior to it. And I'm not saying that as some highfalutin anything. The reality is that one of the issues that we are facing, it's one of the smaller issues, but it's significant for our community. Our ordinances are outdated. And they're outdated for what our collective community is interested in having here. And I'm talking about old school native Madisonians, and I'm also talking about folks who want to be a part of the community and care for the mountain values here in Madison County. So my goal in being on the commission is in order to bring my training and my scholarship around ordinances in order to help avoid these conflicts in the future, because they're huge liabilities. And I believe ultimately our budget is so small that the county commissioners just really couldn't stand the idea of so much money going to a lawsuit that would draw funds out of other areas of our county that were really, really critical. But that being said, I would have voted against the asphalt plant. I think that the North Carolina Department Department of Natural Resources is very clear about the dangers of asphalt plants in rural communities. And until our regulation standards are better, I think we need to be very conscientious about the kinds of industrial operations we allow in our community.
Yeah, in North Carolina, I believe the state is really lax on asphalt plants. I think there's more asphalt plants in North Carolina than any other state. But continuing on, Matthew Wechtel is the only Republican on the board. What is your party affiliation, and have you been a long-time member of that party?
Sure. No, I've been a 22-year unaffiliated voter. You know, when I first voted, I was a Democrat and was so up in Washington, D.C., where I lived as a young woman. But when I moved to North Carolina, I decided that the choices were more varied here, and it was important for me to be able to be a part of the conversation, regardless of what party. Plus, politics has been a little bit rough here in this last 2 decades.
Yeah.
And it's kind of nice not to be beholden to a specific party line. That said, I decided conscientiously that the Democratic Party is actually the voice of common sense moving forward in the future. And so when I was approached by some single mamas and asked if I would toss my hat into the race for this Democratic nomination, I thought about it for a minute because of that very issue of having been an unaffiliated for so many years and my work on behalf of unaffiliated. And I decided, you know what, it's more important for us to have the voices at the table than it is to be party purist.
Yeah.
That said, if I'm elected, my goal is to be a bridge builder amongst all the voices at the table, regardless of party.
Yeah, that would be good. Well, Rupa, who was the first president you voted for?
I got to vote right when I turned 18. I was able to vote for Bill Clinton in 1992.
I see.
And I voted consistently ever since then. And I can remember the excitement and enthusiasm at that time. It felt like a real game changer in our country, not just because it was a younger president, but because we actually had folks who were conscientious of some of the challenges that vulnerable populations in the United States were facing. And it was very nice to have a voice in that office who at least acknowledged it and didn't try and just push it under the covers as to be disregarded.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was the last president to balance the budget, too. But continuing on, 2020 is an unprecedented year with the COVID-19 taking hold and people out of work, angry, police violence against protesters and civilians. How can you as a leader help us get through it all? You know, I rarely see letters to the editor in our local paper from the commissioners. I don't see. I see the commissioners' meetings are met with silence when citizens speak, and the website for the commissioners is lacking, in my opinion. So, how would you ease our angst?
Well, let me work backwards on that and first say that it's completely reasonable for us to be having these types of anger, frustration, all of the emotions that we're feeling, because it's been such a topsy-turvy time for our country, for our economics, for the stability, and for the standards that we all kind of presumed and maybe took for granted in ways we shouldn't have. I would say that, the county commissioners, from my personal voter perspective, needs to be much more transparent about what's happening for the county commissioners. And I just think that it's been done a certain way for so long, and there's very rational reasons why. But I think more effort can be made to make sure that the public is truly informed about what is actually taking place in the county. I think that an informed electorate is actually the best way to govern a community, especially when you're dealing with times of crisis where people really need to know, where the baseline is and whatnot. So I think transparency is very important, and I think we can easily fix the website so that it makes it more easily accessible for people to participate in our local democracy. In terms of a leader, I come to the idea of leadership as a mother. I've always done that, whether it's organizing events in various locations where I had to be team leader and make sure that folks were on point with their tasks, or whether it was inspiring individuals to participate in a more obscure, dance opportunity or something like that, some revitalization project. So being a mom, my approach is to make sure that everybody knows that their voice is welcome and valid. It does not mean that they necessarily are correct. And if we're able to maintain that perspective, then it at least allows folks to feel that they have a investment by their county commissioner in them as members of the community. And it's my personal ethics that make me believe that's the necessary standard. And so that's how I would be functioning in order to help provide some leadership during these challenging times. And I just have to give a quick shout out to Tammy over there at the Health Department. I think she's shown excellent examples of leadership. And
I totally, here. Tammy Cody has done a wonderful job at keeping our numbers pretty low, I think.
Yeah, and she made wise choices, and I think she did it from a perspective that many mothers have, which is how can we prevent the worst case scenario?
Well, they say that it's going to be tough for many months to come with the reduced income for the county. Lack of jobs and so on lack of purchases, and those things are all going to drain from our tax base. Any ideas as to how you can raise the coffers, fill the coffers with money from tax increases, higher building permits, increased fees? What do you have in terms of ideas about our tax reduction this year?
Sure, I've actually given it some consideration because it's such a critical part of how we're going to deal with our future. I'm absolutely against any tax increases. We can't do that to our population. And in fact, we may need to have some abayances depending upon what happens with COVID for periods of time. But I think that the decision that the commissioners made to leave the county taxes where they were was wise. And if you don't mind, I'll just tell you why. Going into the future that is as unknown as COVID presents for us, it's very important that we have solid social services available. And so although the county tax bill is going to show up, it's going to show you owe this particular amount of money, the county will have a period of time where they can work with you and potentially offer some sort of an abeyance locally so that you're not impacted should things get worse. But in the meantime, we know for sure that folks who are not impacted are able to pay their bills and contribute into the critical social services that we are going to need in our county should things take a turn for the worse in the future, which may that not be so.
Well, go ahead.
No, so I think that we've got to work with the tax base that we have and recognize that, we just had an added $500,000 investment that was required, put into our local infrastructure because of COVID. And that's important. We need to have the right structures in place to deal with all the challenges we've got. So I'm absolutely against raising our taxes. Higher building permits, I'm amenable to looking at what that looks like, because I think that with development, we need to make sure that folks who are developing are actually tithing into the community at an appropriate rate for what they're getting. In terms of increasing fees, I think we have to be very delicate with that. Our locals, I don't ever want to see someone get taxed out of our community. That's very important that we don't turn into an elitist community like that.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Those are kind of my takes on it.
Well, again, listeners, on the phone with me is Rupa Roos, who is seeking one of the two seats, one vacated by Wayne Brigman, and the other, Matthew Wechtel, is an incumbent seeking re-election. If you have concerns, you may reach her at, what is your email address, Rupa?
Sure, it's Rupa, that's R-U-P-A, the number 4, Rupa4 Madison at gmail.com. That's a great email way to reach me.
Yeah, okay, good. October 15th, early voting starts, folks, so get involved, please. Rupa, the Democratic Party had a pretty much virtual convention, while the Republican convention didn't worry too much about face masks, social distancing, especially on the night Trump accepted the nomination at the White House. How do you feel about the use of face masks, social distancing, and the like, and do you see these as a measure, as a hindrance to our freedoms, or are they necessary?
Interesting hotbed topic there, Jim.
Yeah, it sure is.
It's important. I got to tell you, I do not like wearing my face mask because I'm not used to wearing it, and so it inherently causes me to have a little bit less oxygen draw than I would like or that I'm used to. But I think it's critical. I think it's really important that we care about our neighbors. I think that's a core mountain value, and making sure that folks in our community who are vulnerable and don't know it are not exposed to this illness is very important. We do not have a hospital in Madison County, and our healthcare facilities are very limited. So the best thing we can do to make sure that every neighbor in Madison County is not exposed or getting sick is by doing due diligence and wearing our masks so that we don't spread it.
Okay. I think Madison County's two largest expenditures are to the Sheriff's Department and the Board of Education. Well, as both budgets will probably be reduced this year, although some people say that it won't be. But would you vote for an even reduction across the board for all county departments, or would you feel some departments might not need as much cutting back on funds?
I'm not a fan of across-the-board reduction for county departments unless it's evident that we've actually thoroughly sussed out and made sure that each department is operating efficiently. That's not to say that they aren't, but I think it's best for us to look at the pockets of areas that need to be restructured. A perfect example is, for all these years, the Sheriff's Department, we've been buying new vehicles, and then we have to pay about $26,000 a year to keep up these vehicles that have high mileage, just because of the nature of our county, where we could potentially save some money by just going into a leasing option for these vehicles, and that would be a nice incentive for our deputies as well, to stay committed to our community.
Yeah.
So I, in general, I don't favor across the board reductions. I think every department can be supported in being as efficient as possible.
Yeah. Changing the subject here, we've all seen the videos of Jacob Blake, George Floyd being killed, and Ahmaud Arbery being killed by some neighbors. Recently, a white 17-year-old killed two peaceful protesters in Wisconsin and walked right by three police vehicles without... You still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Without being arrested until the next day. Speak of police use of extreme force, civilians killing others, and just the violence afflicting a few of our major cities. Trump and Pence blame Democrats. Do you? And why?
Oh, no. No.
Oh, yeah. I'll take all the blame, right?
Yeah, well, and I also don't blame the Republicans. I think that there is a personal choice that's really critical to these devastating decisions that are made, whether it's by a police officer or whether it's by two gentlemen who are acting more vigilante in their neighborhood, or whether it's by a 17-year-old who was in the wrong place at the wrong time and now is going to have to bear the responsibility of the decision to have a loaded weapon in that environment.
Yeah.
It is heartbreaking. We should not forget that is not the only 17-year-old who ends up in these kinds of situations and ends up having to be held accountable in ways that are tough, are really, really tough. I think that in general, we need to look locally at what is happening in our community. And if we can stay focused on what's happening in our neighborhoods, we have a better chance of more calmly addressing the challenges that are impacting us locally and personally. As much as I believe in volunteering and supporting and going out to other areas that are challenged and whatnot, I think if we're just focusing on the neighborhood nearby, but we're not actually looking at how our own environment is operating, then we're not actually, living the way that we need to be. That said, we have a very strong sheriff's department in Madison County. That is a very, very strong sheriff. I have had a chance to talk with a couple of policing agents about the concerns that I have in general about just making sure that police officers who are in the positions that our deputies are given the mental health support so that they can actually be in these, emergency situations and make the best decision possible under the circumstances.
Well, good answer.
And not just rely on weaponry or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I went to the Black Lives Matter website recently, and their mission is, quote, to eradicate white supremacy and build local power to intervene in violence inflicted on black communities by the state and vigilantes, unquote. Do you support that mission, and why?
This is the first time that I'm coming across that statement, and I will say that I am not a Black Lives Matter person. That's not my fight to fight. But I am an ally for everyone who is trying to live equally in our society. As a woman and as a single mom, I'm very aware of the imbalance of powers amongst various populations, based on gender and based on, the color of your skin and economic imbalances of power. And it's my belief that we need that.
Okay. There we go. You're cutting out.
Can you hear me? Okay?
There we go.
our mountain signal. It's important for us to eradicate all inequality in our country, and we have not done that yet.
Yeah.
In terms of the Black communities, I have immense compassion for that fight, and I will be an ally to common sense ways of dealing with those challenges.
Okay. Well, Rupa, our time is about out. How about giving your website one more time?
Sure. Folks can find out more and keep up with the various events that I'm hosting online and the occasional in-person visits that I'm making by going to Facebook. And you can just search for RUPA, the number 4, Madison. So Rupa for Madison. And I have a whole slew of platform information from my Madison Works program ideas all the way to how we can better deal with the economics and prevention issues in Madison County for our future.
Mm-hmm. That's about it. You obviously live in a place where giving out a phone number might not help too much.
I am actually making my phone number available for folks who would be interested in texting me. And
okay.
I'm not hiding. My phone number that you can text me at is 828-380-9522. And if anybody would like to ask me any questions about my history or my policies, I'm more than happy to disclose about why I've decided to step forward on behalf of our community. I want to thank you, Jim, so much for letting me come on. This is now my second visit. I feel very grateful for that.
You're catching up to some of the other guys that I think have been. I think Will Hoffman of the school board's been on 4 or 5 times. But anyways, glad to have you back. It's always nice talking with you. You do have very interesting programs on Thursday nights via Zoom that I think are well worth anybody wanting to know more about you, as well as getting into some good discussions. So Thursday night, they're from 6 to 7, right?
Yeah, 6:30 to 7:30. We've got the Zoom Let's Talk conversations, and we've now got a nice, well-oiled machine going, so the technological challenges are no longer at issue, and we're having some really substantive conversations. Last week we talked about safety issues, supporting our firefighters, as well as prevention issues. And this next one is going to be on September 24th. Mm-hmm. It'll be on Zoom. You can find the free link on the Facebook page, Rupa for Madison on Facebook, and we'll be discussing teen and elder issues for that conversation.
Well, you're going to be talking about me then, aren't you?
It's targeted.
Oh boy, it's getting older out. I'm getting older out there. Well, anyways, Rupa, thank you for coming on today. I hope your wishes come true, as I wish all of the candidates the best. But good luck in the election coming up.
Thank you for your time, Jim. It's a pleasure to talk with you. Have a blessed day, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.